Balihari. Yachabiki Balihari. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai. Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Bhakta Bhakta Sabha Tumane Tare. Bhakta Bhakta Sabha Tumane Tare. Bina Bhakti Hama Tade Dware. Bina Bhakti Hama Tade Dware. Licho Kabara Hamari. Hamari Licho Kabara Kamari. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai. Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Arjuna Kerata Hankana Hare. Arjuna Kerata Hankana Hare. Gita ke upadesha tumare. Gita ke upadesha hamar hare. Shakasudasana Dari. Dari Shakasudasana Dari. Dari Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai. Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai. Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari, Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari, Jai Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Bora Haribo, Nitagora, Haribo, 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 Bora Haribo, Nitagora, Haribo, 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 Bora Haribo. Haribo, 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 Gora Haribo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Sundara Kundala Naina Vishala, Sundara Kundala Naina Vishala, Gale Sohe Vajanti Mala, Gale Sohe Vajanti Mala, Yachabiki Balihari, Balihari, Jai Radha Madana Murari, Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Kabahun Luta Luta Tadikaryo, Kabahun Madhuvana Rasa Charachayo, Kabahun Madhuvana Vacharachayo, Nachata Vipina Vihari, Yachata Vipina Vihari, Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Jai Keshava Kalimalahari, Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Kualabala Sangha Denu Charai, Kualabala Sangha Denu Charai, Vana Vana Brahmata Pire Yadurai, Vana Vana Brahmana Pire Yadurai, Kande Kamara Kani, Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Jai Keshava Kalimalahari, Jai Keshava Kalimalahari, Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari, Jai Chura Chura Navanita Jokayo, Chura chura navanita jokayo. Vajavanatana palanama darayo. Vajavanitana payi namadaryo. Makala chora murari. Makala chora murari. Jai Madhava Madhena Murari. Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari. Jai Jai Madhava Madhena Murari. Jai Ekadina Manda Indra Komaryo. Ekadina Manda Indra Komaryo. Naka Upada Govardhana Daryo. Naka Upada Govardhana Daryo. Namapadayo Giridhari. Namapadayo Giridhari. Jai Madhava Madhena Murari. Jai Madhava Madhena Murari. Jai Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari. Jai Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari. Jai Jai Madhava Madhena Murari. Jai Duryodhana ko bogana kayo. Duryodhana ko bogana kayo. Rako saga vidura gara kayo. Rako saga vidura gara vayo. I say prema pujari. I say prema pujari. Jai Madhava Madhena Murari. Jai Madhava Madhena Murari. Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari. Jai Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai Karuna Karajopa Dipukari Karuna Karajopa Dipukari Patali Patagaye Vanavari Patali Patagaye Vanavari Nirakarahe Nari Nari Rahe Nirakara Nirakara he naranari Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai Bhakta Bhakta Sabha Tumanitare Bhakta Bhakta Sabha Tumanitare Bina Bhakti Hamatade Dware Bina Bhakti Hamatade Dware Lijo Kabara Hamari Lijo Kabara Hamari Madhava Madana Murari Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai Jai Keshava Kalimala Hari Jai Jai Madhava Madana Murari Jai Arjuna Kerata Hankana Hare Arjuna Kerata Hankana Hare Gita ke Upadesha Tumare Gita ke Upadesha Tumare Chakra Sudarshana Dari Chakra Sudarsana Dari Madhava Madhana Murari Jai Jai Madhava Madhana Murari Jai Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Nitya Gaura Premanande Ki Jai. I haven't sung this for a long time. I hope I don't mess it up. If you want liberation from material life, repeat the very sweet name of Krishna. Leave behind all the volumes of sins. Sing Keshava, Madhava, and Govinda. Everyone agrees that chanting God's names gives happiness. The worst of sins from previous births vanish. Hellish conditions go away if you also sing Keshava, Madhava, Govinda. Dark-colored Krishna is dear to devotees. Chanting his names brings about liberation. Everyone sing the glories of his holy name. Sing Keshava, Madhava, Govinda. Govinda, Govinda, Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hare Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hare Hari Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Jo chahe bhave sagar taran, kaho mita sadur Krishna nam. Jo chahe bhave sagar sitaran, kaho mita sadur Krishna nam. Sabke pabon ke gutare ye choro, Keshava Madhava Govinda Bolo. Sabke papon ke gatari charo, Keshava Madhava Govinda Bolo. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Nama japa sabhi kahin he sukakari. Nama japa sabhi kahin he sukakari. Papa katenga saba janmon ke bari. Papa katenga saba janmon ke bari. Narak milage kabe chotumbi. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Keshav Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Boy, Mukunda Madhava Govinda Boy. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Shama Sundara Pyara Bhaktan Kahaye. Shama Sundara Pyara Bhaktan Kahaye. Uske nama japte hi mukti payi. Uske nama japta hai mukti payi. नाम की महिमा ही सब मिल गाओ. नाम की महिमा है सब मिल गाओ. केशव माधव गोविंद बोल. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Boy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Hare Bol. Hey Bola, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Hare Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Boy. Bolo Keshava Madhava Govinda Boy. Bolo Keshava Madhava Govinda Boy. Keshava Madhava Govinda Boy. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Govinda Bol. Gaur Premanandi, Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. What time is it now? 7:12. Okay. Let's see. This song was sung by Rupa Goswami, so this is the next song. He is the real person, actual person to understand Radha and Krishna. So he says, all glories to Radharani. Radha, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate. She is so dear to Krishna. Krishna. Everyone is trying to love Krishna, but Krishna is trying to love somebody. Now how great she is. Just try to understand. Everyone, the whole world, the whole universe, all living entities, they are trying to love Krishna. Krishna Prema. Lord Chaitanya describes Prema Pumartha Mahan. The highest perfection of life is to achieve pure love for Lord Krishna. And Rupa Goswami described that you are distributing Krishna Prema, O Lord Chaitanya. So Krishna Prema is so valuable. But Krishna is after Radharani. Just see how Radharani is great. Just try to understand the greatness of Srimati Radharani. Therefore she is so great, and we have to offer our respect to her. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate. How is she? Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite. Taruni means young girls. You'll see the pictures. They're all young girls. But of all the young girls, she is the most beautiful. Radha is enchanting to the young girls also. She is so beautiful. Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite. Damodara Rati Vardhana Vese. And she always dresses herself so nicely that Damodara, Krishna, becomes attracted by her beauty. Hari Niskuta Vrinda Vipinede. And she is the only lovable object of Krishna. And she is the queen of Vrindavana. This queen of Vrindavana, you'll find in Vrindavana, if you go to Vrindavana, everyone is worshipping Radharani. Rani means queen. They're always speaking, Jai Radhe, Jai Radhe, Jai Radharani. All the devotees in Vrindavana, they are worshippers of Srimati Radharani. Hari Niskuta Vrinda Vipinede. Rishabhanu Dadi Nava Sachi Leke. And she appeared as the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and her companion, Lalita Saki and Vishaka Saki, and the devotees. So on behalf of pure devotees of Krishna, Rupa Goswami is praying, Karunam Kurumai Karuna Bharite. Oh, my worshipable Radharani, you are full of mercy, so I am begging for your mercy because you are so merciful. Very easily you offer or bestow your mercy, so I am begging your mercy. Karunam Kurumai Karuna Bharite. Sanaka Sanatana Varnita Charite. Now, somebody may say, oh, you are so great, learned scholar, you are so great, saintly person, and you are begging mercy from an ordinary girl, a cowgirl? How is that? Therefore, Rupa Goswami says, oh, this is not ordinary cowgirl. Sanaka Sanatana Varnita Charite. This girl's description is possible to be made by great saintly persons like Sanaka and Sanatana. She is not ordinary. So the lesson is that we should not treat Radharani as ordinary girl or Krishna as ordinary man. They are the supreme absolute truth. But in the absolute truth, there is the pleasure potency, and that is exhibited in the dealings of Radha and Krishna. And Radha's expansion, all the gopis, and Krishna is the supreme Lord. Shrimati Radharani Ki Jai. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate Gokula Taruni Mandala Maite. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate Gokula Taruni Mandala Maite. Damodara Arati Vardhana Vese Hari Niskuta Vrindavi Pinese. Damodara Arati Vardhana Vese Hari Niskuta Vrindavi Pinese. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate Gokula Taruni Mandala Mohite. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite. Vrishabhanudadi Navasasi Leke Lalita Sakhi Guna Ramita Vishake. Vrishabhanudadi Navasasi Leke Lalita Sakhi Guna Ramita Vishake. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate Gokula Taruni Mandala Maite. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate Gokula Taruni Mandala Maite. Karunam Kuru Mai Karuna Varite Sanaka Sanatana Varnita Charite Karunam Kuru Mai Karuna Varite Sanaka Sanatana Varnita Charite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite Gokula Taruni Mandala Mohite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite Gokula Taruni Mandala Mohite Radhe Jaya Jaya Mandala Mahite Gokula Karuni Gokula Gaite Mandala Mahite Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe. Bolo Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Jayo Radhe. Tagore Premanandi ki jai, Shrimati Radharani ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. What time is it now?
7:26.
Huh?
7:26.
Okay, time for one more. Murali Manohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala. Bolo Murali Manohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala. Bolo Murali Manohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala. Bolo Murali Manohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala.
Murari Manohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala.
Gopala, Gopala, Murali Manohar Gopala.
Gopala, Gopala, Murari Mohan Gopala.
Hey, bolo Gopala, Gopala, Murali Manohar Gopala.
Gopala, Gopala, Murari Mohan Gopala.
Murali Manohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala.
Murari Mohan Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala.
Jaya Hari Radhe, Jaya Hari Vrinda, Jaya Govardhana Gopala.
Jai Hari Radhe Govinda, Jai Govinda Gopala.
Murali Manohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala.
Murari Mohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala.
Hey, bolo Murali Manohar Gopala, Govinda Radhe Gopala.
Jai Manohar Gopala, Govinda Madhe Gopala.
Gopala, Bhaja Gopala, Murali Manohar Gopala.
Gopala, Gopala, Murali Manohar Gopala.
Jayu Giridhari, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari.
Jai Hari Jai Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari.
Bolo Jayu Giridhari, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari.
Jai Giridhari, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Giridhari Kunja Bihari Shama Murari Gopala
Jai Giridhari Kunja Bihari Jamakundi Kunja Bihari
Shama Murari Gopala Murari Manohara Gopala
Shama Pranay Gopala Manli Manohar Gopala
Murali Manohara Gopala
Murli Manohar Gopala
Murali Manohara Gopala Murali Manohara Gopala
Murli Manohar Gopala Murli Manohar Gopala
Gopi Vallabha Dina Dayal Dina Dayal Dina Dayal
Gopi Vallabha Kaivalal Dina Dayal Dina Dayal
Gopi Vallabha Dina Dayal Dina Dayal Dina Dayal
Gopi Vallabha Dina Dayal Dina Dayal Dina Dayal
Gopi Vallabha Dina Dayal Gopi Vallabha Dina Dayal
Gopi Vallabha Dina Dayal Gopi Vallabha Dina Dayal
Devaki Nandana Gopala Murari Manohara Gopala Bolo
Dinanandana Gopala Murli Manohar Gopala
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare
Bolo
Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna
Murali Manohar Gopala Govinda Radhe Gopala 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 Murali Manohar Gopala
Gopala
Hey bolo Gopala Gopala Murali Manohar Gopala
Gopala Gopala Murli Manohar Gopala
Gopala Gopala Murali Manohar Gopala
Gopala Gopala Murli Manohar Gopala
Kiba Jayo Jaya Gora Chande Arati ke soba
Shiva Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Arati Ka Shobha
Janavitatavane Jagajanamana-loba
Janavitatavane Jagamana-loba
Gorangera-rotik-soba Jagajanamana-loba
Gaurangera Arati Shubha Janam Janamana-loba
Jagajanamana-loba
Janam Janamana-loba
Jagajanamana-loba
Janam Janamana-loba
Nitaya Chan Vanmin Gadadhara
Madhakin Nitaya Chan Vame Gadadhara
Nikate Advaita Shini Vasachakradara
Anikate Adaita Srini Vasachakradara
Kibajayo Jaya Gorachan Maruti Kesoba
Kiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chande Arati Kesoba
Janavitatavane Jagamana-loba
Janavitatavane Jagamana-loba
Gorangera-rotik-soba Jagajanamana-loba
Gaurangera Arati Shubha Janam Janamana-loba
Jagajanamana-loba
Janam Janamana-loba
Jagajanamana-loba
Janam Janamana-loba
Kibaboshi Nachengorachan Ratna Singha Sane
Kibabashi Achen Gorachan Ratna Singashane
Arati Korena Brahma Adideva Gane
O Arati Korena Brahma Adideva Gane
Kibajayo Jaya Gorachan Arati Kesoba
Kiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chande Arati Kashoba
Janavitatavane Jagajanamana-loba
Janavitatavane Jagamana-loba
Gorangera-rotik-soba Jagajanamana-loba
Gaurangera Arati Shubha Janam Janamana-loba
Jagajanamana-loba
Janam Janamana-loba
Jagajanamana-loba
Janam Janam-loba
Kibanara-hari-adikori Chamaradulaya
Kibanara-hari-adikori Chamaradulaya
Sanjaya Mukunda Vasu Kosa Adigaya
Sanjaya Mukunda Vachu Krishnadigaya
Kiba Jayo Jaya Gora Chande Arati Kesoba
Kiba Jaya Jaya Gora Chande Arati Kasubha
Jana Vitata Vane Jagajana Manaloba
Janavi Tatavane Jaganana Lobha
Orangera Rotiksoba Jagajana Manaloba
Gaurangera Arati Shubha Janam Jana Manaloba
Jagajana Manaloba
Janam Janam Jana Lobha
Jagajana Manaloba
Janam Janam Manalobha
Kiba Shankar Baje Ganta Baje Baje Karatala Kiba
Shankha Baje Ganta Bhaje Baje Kartala
Madhura Mirdanga Baje Paramarasala
Madhura Midanga Bhaje Paramarasala
Shankha Baje Ganta Baje Madhur 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 Baje
Shankha Baje Ganta Baje Madhur 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 Baje
Shankha Baje Ganta Baje Bola Shankha
Baje Ganta Baje
Shankha Baje Ganta Baje
Shankha Baje Ganta Baje
Madhur 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 Baje
Madhur 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 Baje
Madhur 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 Baje
Madhur 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 Baje
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare
Hey, bolo
Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
Bolo
Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Bola Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Bola Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Shiva Bahu Koti Chandra Jini Vadana Ujvala Shiva Bahu
Koti Chandra Jini Vadana Ujvala
Gala de Sevanamala Kori Jala Mala
Galag Desh Banamala
Kori Jala Mala Jayo Jaya Gora Chande Arati ke soba
Jayo Jayo Gora Chande Arati Kashoba
Chana Vita Tabane Jagamana Loban Jana Vitakavane Jagadana Manaloba Gorangira Rotik Soba Jagajana Manaloba
Gorangira Rotik Soba Janam Janam Manaloba
Shiva Sukhanarada Preme Gada Gada
Shiva Sukhanarada Preme gada gada
Bhakti vinoda deke Gora sampada
Bhakti vinoda deke Gaurara sampada
Kibayo jaya Gora chande Arati ke soba
Kiva jaya jaya Gora chande Arati ka shobha
Janavita kabane Jagajana manaloba
Jana bitatavane Jagam nanamana lobha
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
Bolo
Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Bolo Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
Bolo Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Bolo Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Bolo Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Baba Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Namaste Narasimhaya Namaste Dadayane
Namaste Narasimhaya Dadayane
Namaste Narasimhaya Dadayane
Namaste Narasimhaya Dadayane
Hiranyakashipur Bhakshahai Shilatankanakalaye
Hiranyakashipur Bhakshahai Shilatankanakalaye
Ito Nishinga Parato Nishinho Yato Yamitato Nishinga
Ito Nishinga Parato Nishinga Yato Yamitato Nishinga
Bayin Nishinga Hidane Nishinga Narashinamadim Saranam Prapade
Bahir Nishinga Hidaye Nishinga Nishingamadim Saranam Prapade
Tavakara Kamala Bare Nakam Aduta Shingham Dalita Hiranyakashipu Danu Bingham Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare
Tavakara Kamala Bare Nakam Adbhuta Shingam Dalita Liranakachipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare
Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
केशवजीता नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
जय केशवधृता नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव
नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम
राम
बोलो हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
बोलो हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे बोलो हरे राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे
बोलो
हरे राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे
हे बोलो हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे राम राम हरे हे बोलो हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा
हरे हरे
हरे राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Bolo
Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hey, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Bolo
Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Bolo
Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram,
Hey,
Hare
bolo
Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare
Bolo
Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare
Bolo
Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare
Chita Chora Yasoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal Chita Chora Yasoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal,
Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal,
Hey
Hey Gopal,
Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal,
Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal.
Chita Chora Yasoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal
Oh Gita Chora Yashoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal
Chita Chora Yasoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal
Chita Chora Yashoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal
Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal,
Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal,
Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal,
Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal.
Chita Chora Yasoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal
Chita Chora Yashoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal
Chita Chora Yasoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal Chita
Chora Yashoda Kebal Navanita Chora Gopal
Hey Gopal, Gopal, Hey Gopal,
Hey Gopal, Hey Gopal, Hey 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 Gopal, Hey Gopal.
Vande Krishna Nandam, Vande Krishna, Vande Gopala, Vande Krishna Nanda Gopala,
Vande Krishna Nanda Gopala,
Vande Krishna Nanda Gopala,
Vande Krishna Nanda Gopala,
Nanda Gopala, Madana Gopala,
Nanda Gopala, Madana Gopala,
Nanda Gopala, Madana Gopala,
Nanda Gopala, Madana Gopala,
Madana Gopala, Govinda
Madana Gopala, Govinda Madhava,
Madana Gopala, Nanda Gopala,
Madana Gopala, Madana Gopala,
Jaya Jaya Deva Hare, Jaya Jaya Deva Hare, Jaya Jaya Deva Hare,
Jaya Jaya Deva Hare,
Jaya Jaya Deva Hare,
Jaya Jaya Deva Hare.
Vande Krishna Nanda Kumara,
Oh, Vande Krishna Nanda Kumara,
Vande Krishna Nanda Kumara,
Vande Krishna Nanda Gopala,
Nanda Kumara, Madana Gopala,
Nanda Kumara, Madana Gopala,
Nanda Kumara, Madana Gopala,
Oh, Nanda Kumara, Madana Gopala,
Madana Gopala, Govinda Gore,
Madana Gopal, Govinda Gopal,
Jaya Jaya Deva Hare,
Jaya Jaya Deva Hare,
Jaya Jaya Deva Hare,
Oh, Jaya Jaya Deva Hare,
Jaya Jaya Deva Hare,
Oh, Jaya Jaya Deva Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Jai Gaura Premanandi Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Grantaraj Ki Jai. So tonight we're going to hear a few words from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the spoken words of Lord Krishna. Arjuna is asking him many questions, and Krishna is answering them one by one. Arjuna's questions are quintessential. In other words, if you ever met Krishna, you would not be able to ask all the types of questions that Arjuna asked Krishna. All the questions Arjuna asked were to clear away any doubts in his mind so that he could surrender completely to the Lord. But he had to hear the answers of the Lord to all the fundamental questions he had about life. So that's why it's very, very important to hear Bhagavad Gita spoken by genuine devotees so that all your questions about life can be answered. And therefore, Krishna tells Arjuna in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavam Aham Avyayam Vivaswan Manave Praha Manur Itzvakave Bravit. Okay, so you can repeat after me. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavam Aham Avyayam Vivaswan Manave Praho Manur Itzvakave Bravit. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaka. So this is the origin of the Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna first spoke it, he spoke it to Surya Narayana, or the sun god, is also named Vivaswan. That is over 140 million years ago. And then he spoke it again to Manu. Manu is Prajapati, and he is one of the 14 Manus during one day of Brahma. And then Manu spoke it to Ikshvaku at least 2 million years ago. Ikshvaku was the founder of the sun, sun parampara in which Lord Ramachandra appeared. And then Krishna spoke it again 5,000 years ago to Arjuna. So the Bhagavad Gita has been existing at least 140 million years. It's not like the Bible goes back 3,000 years or 3,500 years. The Quran goes back, the Buddhist writings go back 2,500 years. And the Quran goes back 1,500 years. We're talking about 140 million years ago. Now, why did he speak it to Arjuna 5,000 years ago? Because he explains it. he says in the next verse, Evam parampara praptam imam rajasayo vidu sakalena mahata yoganasta parantava. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. So, by the time of Arjuna, in other words, every time Krishna respoke the Bhagavad Gita, it's because there was some degradation in the teaching of it. And that happens. Everything in time deteriorates. Therefore, the Lord is in charge of maintaining the principles of Sanatana Dharma. So he'll come whenever there's a degradation of the philosophical understanding, and he recharges it again by delivering it to a devotee of his choice. So he chose Arjuna to begin again the parampara, or the disciplic succession, 5,000 years ago. And then he says, Saevayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratana bhaktosi me saka cheti rahasyam hitad uttamam. Now, why did he choose Arjuna? There were so many great sages present 5,000 years ago. Vyasadeva was there, and Narada Muni was there. They were all great sages. He chose Arjuna, who was a Kshatriya, a fighter, a killer, but he killed only on the basis of Dharma, not to gain territory or take over other people's wives or things like that. And why did he choose Arjuna? He explains it in this verse. Bhaktosi me saka cheti rahasam hitad uttamam. Because Arjuna was Bhakta and Saka. He was a devotee of Lord Krishna and his intimate friend. So he chose Arjuna for these two qualities. And later on he says also that he is not envious. That's why he chose Arjuna. So then he says, Rahasam hitad uttamam. He chose Arjuna to understand the transcendental mystery of this Krishna conscious science. And it is a science. Science means something that is true in every reference frame and at all times. It is not in any way different in different times or in different frames of reference. So this is the absolute truth about how to approach God and become liberated from the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. And it's been existing for a very long time, and we still have it today. This is the miracle of Vedic knowledge, that it has been preserved from the most ancient times. Even though there have been attempts to misinterpret it, still today we have Bhagavad Gita Yata Rup, as it is. This is the same Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna heard. And how do we know that? Anyone who hears this Bhagavad Gita with the commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, arrives at the same conclusion as Arjuna. What was Arjuna's conclusion after hearing Bhagavad Gita? Nasti moha smitir labdva tat prasadat mayuchita stitosmi gata sandeha karishya vachanam tava. He tells Arjuna, tells Krishna, Na asti moha. Now my moha, my illusion is over. Smitir labdva. I can remember who I am. I am your eternal servant. And nasti moha smitir labdva tat prasadat mayuchita. This is your best prasad, Krishna. The best prasad that you can give me is you have eradicated all my illusions in life. I know what is my real identity. I'm your eternal servant. And I know what is my duty in life. I'm to hear your instructions and carry them out. So he says, na asti moha. And then he says, stitosmi. Now I'm situated in my right position. Stitosmi satakan Andeha, I don't have any doubts. And then the ultimate statement of faith and love of God, Karishya vachanam tava. Whatever you tell me, that's what I'm going to do, Krishna. So if you have a son or daughter, and when they get to be 16 or 18 or 24, and they tell you over and over again, Mom, Dad, whatever you tell me, that's what I'm going to do. Would you be happy? You're exactly right. You would be extremely happy. And this is what Arjuna said. Karishya vachanam tava. Whatever you tell me, that's what I'm going to do. So that is the ultimate statement of faith. That is, someone has so much faith in you that whatever you tell them, they're going to do. Well, Arjuna has so much faith in Krishna, whatever advice he gives him, he's going to follow it integrally. So then, in the next verse, Arjuna is going to say, Sa'eva yam mayate. We said that, okay? Okay. So this verse says that this very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is told to me, to you today, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So if you want to be Hare Krishna, if you want to understand Bhagavad Gita, you must be Krishna's friend, and you must be Krishna's devotee. So, tatvidi paripatena paripastena sevaya upadekshami te jnanam jnaninas tatvadarshinaha. What does it mean to become a devotee? It means that you approach the Guru, in this case Krishna is the original Guru of everyone. You approach the Guru with three attitudes. Pranipat, submissiveness, and paripastena, asking significant questions as Arjuna is asking, and seva, offering service to the Guru. These are the three attitudes that are necessary for the shishya or the disciple when he or she approaches the Guru. And when the Guru sees this proper behavior of the disciple, then he's inspired to speak. And that's exactly what Krishna does here. And in the next verse he says, Arjuna sort of challenges him a little bit. He says, Aparam bhavato janma, param janma vivasvata, katam etad vijaniyam, tvamado proktavam iti. Arjuna said, the sun god Vivaswan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? So he instructed 140 million years ago, and here now Krishna is about 125 years old, apparently, and he's speaking to Arjuna on the battle of Kurukshetra. So Arjuna is puzzled. How is this possible? Vivaswan lived so many years ago. Now Krishna answers, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha,
Sri Bhagavan Uvacha,
Bahuni me vyatitani,
Bahuni me vyatitani,
Janmani tavacharjuna,
Janmani tavacharjuna,
Tanyaham Veda Sarvani,
Tanyaham Veda Sarvani,
Natvam Veta Parantapa.
Natvam Veta Parantapa.
The personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy, Arjuna. So, this is the difference between God and the jiva, or living entity like you and me. Every time we take birth again, we forget our previous life and all our previous lives. But Krishna does never forget. Why not? Because his body is eternal. He has an eternal body. You know, today I was listening to a lecture on the YouTube by, I'm not going to say his name, but by a Mayavad philosopher. And he was speaking to the audience, and they asked him a question about the soul. And he said, the soul is like electricity. It is just energy. It does not have any form. And then he kept saying a lot of other things, comparing the soul to electricity. But this is wrong. the soul is a person. It has an eternal form. And this is the beginning of spiritual life, when you accept that you have a soul and it is eternal. It was never born and it never dies. The only thing that is born is the body, and that body is constantly changing. And the only thing that dies is the body, but not the soul. And the soul is the source of energy in the body. But there are two souls in the body. There's Paramatma and there's Jivatma. Jivatma is you and me, and Paramatma is Krishna. So, because of the presence of Krishna and the presence of the individual soul in the body is illuminated with energy. And it functions on the energy coming from the soul. As soon as the soul leaves the body is dead. And you can't bring it back to life. So here's a guru speaking to a lot of so-called disciples, but he's giving them wrong information. Now, how do we know the soul has a body? Because Krishna is the supreme soul, and he has a body. But his body is not made of veins and bones and ligaments and tendons and blood and stool and urine and so forth. His body is made of Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. And we also have a body that is made of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Now, all this knowledge is very seldom spoken, because most of the gurus in India are Mayavadis, impersonalists. They don't believe that God is a person, and they don't believe that you and me are persons. They believe that this is all illusory, and therefore they try and deny the individuality in order to merge into a homogeneous light called the Brahman Effulgence. Well, the Brahman Effulgence is actually the light that's emanated from the body of Krishna. So there are three levels of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanti tat tatu vidas tattvam yajganam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti sabhyate. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, explains that there are three levels of understanding God. First one level is Brahman, the light emanating from the body of God, which is Sat, it's the position of eternity. And then there is the super soul, or Paramatma, which is present in every atom of the universe and in the heart of every living entity. That's why things work in nature. And the Paramatma represents knowledge, Sat Chit, and knowledge and consciousness. And then the third level of understanding God is Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's a person, but he's not an ordinary person. He doesn't have the dichotomy or the duality of a soul and the body. He does not have a material body, but he has a spiritual body. And it's not made of bones and ligaments and so forth. It's made of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. So, have you ever seen a body made of eternity, bliss, and knowledge? Well, Krishna manifested it 5,000 years ago on this earth. It looks exactly like a human being, 2 arms, 1 head, and 2 legs, and so forth, and fingers and toes and so forth. But the body itself is constituted of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. So, does something that is constituted of eternity, bliss, and knowledge have a form? Yes. And you do too, and I do too. But right now, our spiritual form is covered by this shroud of material energy in the form of a body that's always changing. And then the ultimate change is death. So, therefore, as long as we are ignorant of who we actually are and what is our relationship with Krishna, our eternal relationship with Krishna, we believe that we're simply made of matter, that there's no God. When we die, everything is over. And therefore, the whole emphasis of life is to make money and spend it for sense gratification. So you see, being denied this transcendental knowledge, we become limited simply to eating, sleeping, and mating and defending like animals. Animals do the same thing because they are completely under the control of their body. Now, when we hear transcendental knowledge, this is transcendental knowledge. Bhagavad Gita is full of transcendental knowledge. When we hear this and we begin to understand that, wait a minute, I've been duped, I've been misled, I've been not educated, I've been dumbed down by modern scientists and philosophers and schools and so-called gurus. They're giving the wrong information, and therefore I'm limiting myself. I don't actually understand what is my potential. The potential of every living entity is to be more powerful than the sun. Now, how can I make that statement? Well, we have the proof. Vivaswan is a jivatma like you and me, or Brahma is a jivatma like you or me. But because they actually believe the Vedic knowledge, and because they accept bona fide gurus, not kangaroos, but real gurus, therefore they have got the right information, and therefore they have become extremely educated and powerful. So much so that Brahma is the original Prajapati in the material universe. And he's managing the whole universe. And there are other devatas like Indra and Chandra and Varuna and so forth. They're all people like us who got the right information, who made the right decisions in their life, and they've been vested with tremendous powers to manage things on behalf of Krishna. Now, are they completely pure devotees? Not exactly. They are very close to being completely pure devotees, but they still have a desire to dominate. So therefore, Krishna gives them tremendous powers of domination as long as they follow the principles of Sanatana Dharma. What are those principles that everyone has to follow dutifully? 1, no meat eating. 2, no gambling and speculation. That means the stock market and things like that, and no gambling in the casinos and things like that. Number 3, no illicit activities outside of marriage. And number 4, no intoxication, including coffee and tea. So those things, if one avoids doing those things, they become very powerful. And then if they, on top of that, chant always the Yuga Dharma recommendation. The Yuga Dharma means the practice that will guarantee you liberation in this lifetime. And that was presented 500 years ago by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he said, and he practiced chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, because it's made up of Krishna, names of Krishna and Rama, and of course Srimati Radharani, who is also Sita Devi. So therefore, if you chant this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Man means the mind, and Tra means deliverance. It'll deliver your mind from ignorance. And then, therefore, Krishna says, Tesam satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayanti te. Someone who worships me with love and devotion, always dedicating their service to me, always thinking about me, I endow them with transcendental knowledge. I reveal it to them. It's revelation theology. So that's how Brahma became enlightened. When he appeared, he did not have a mother, and he only had a father, and that was Lord Narayana. And he appeared on a lotus flower, and in the stem of that lotus flower was the universe that had not been fully created yet. So he tried to find out who he was, what was his origin. He couldn't figure it out. He went through that whole stem in which the whole universe is right now, and he couldn't identify anything. So he came back, and he heard 2 syllables of the Sanskrit alphabet, da, ba. And he understood what it was, because, like us, he was existing in a previous lifetime. and he was obviously a very pious person, but he still had this desire to control things. However, when he heard those two letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, he understood what it was from his previous life, and he performed a very severe type of tapasya, or tapa, and he did it successfully for a very long time, and then Krishna revealed to him from his heart the knowledge how to proceed with the material creation. Krishna had already created earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego, and you expand them into 24 elements of the material creation. But now those elements had to be form different bodies, and so Brahma was the original Prajapati, and then he had sons who were also Prajapatis, like Daksha and others, and they engendered all the different species in the universe right in the beginning of time, and there are 8,400,000 species. In order to come to the human form of life, we have already gone through all those 8,400,000 species. That includes aquatics, it includes plants, it includes reptiles, it includes birds, it includes insects, it includes mammals, and it includes human beings. 8,400,000 species in the whole universe. It's because the Vedas deal with the whole universe. They don't just deal with the Earth planet. In order to come to the human form of life, you have to go through all those species. That takes a very, very long time, hundreds and millions of years. But once we get to the human form of life, we have all the instruments necessary for self-realization. We have a highly developed mind, senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and we have highly developed mind and intelligence. So these are information gathering or knowledge gathering instruments. But if we misuse them because we get fooled by modern education to think that the goal of life is to eat, sleep, mate, and defend, make a lot of money, and buy a lot of different gadgets and houses and boats and cars and so forth, then we waste our time and we don't deserve to be born as a human being in the next life. But if we use these assets properly and try and understand our eternal soul's existence and its relationship to Krishna, and how to use the material energy to attain liberation from birth, death, old age, and disease, then we can solve this problem. Our problem is birth, old age, disease, and death. These are our real problems. And we can solve that problem once and for all. But you can only do it in the human form of life. You can't do it in the dog's body. You can't. In the deva bodies, the demigod bodies, it's possible, but they have so much power and so much longevity of life and so much abilities to have sense gratification that sometimes they get bewildered by it. But the human form of life is ideal because it's a mixed bag of a little bit of happiness, a lot of suffering. And that suffering is a message to us that we're not doing the right thing in the human body, which should be realizing our eternal relationship with Krishna. So if we understand all these things, then we will allocate a maximum amount of time for self-realization and engage in acts of devotion without any material desires for a return. So we cannot be banyas with Krishna. I give you now $500, but you make sure my son passes the SAT. This is nonsense. That's not a prayer. A prayer is glorifying God. But if we try and do business, you go to Balaji and say, okay, Balaji, please let my business do better. And my wife has a backache, get rid of the backache. And then my grandfather, he had a stroke, so make sure he's back to normal again. And here's my $10. This is nonsense. That's business. That's banya business. That's not the way to approach God. So, how do we learn how to approach God? You have to read Bhagavad Gita, and it has to be explained to you by a genuine sadhu who knows Bhagavad Gita and is practicing it. practicing what? Practicing bhakti, pure devotion to Krishna without any material motive. So this is the power of this one book. If you just study this one book, you will solve all the problems of life. We have to understand that. And that's why this is the most ancient book extant or existing in the universe. And it's spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. There's no other book like this. And we're so fortunate to have it today. Now, all the questions about life are answered. So I'll stop on that point. If you have any questions, you can ask me right now. The way we answer questions is we show you where Krishna has answered that in the Bhagavad Gita. But there are some questions like, what's the stock market going to do on Monday? I don't know. So don't ask that question. But ask significant questions about the purpose of life. Or any question you have about confusion about what to do in this lifetime. So any question. Oh, Gopal Krishna, go ahead. Give him the microphone. You can take your mask off so I can understand what you're saying.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, how can we hug Krishna?
How can you hug Krishna?
Yeah.
When you become a pujari, you can hug Krishna. So you have to become a pujari. You can wash his feet. You can even hug him when nobody's looking. Haribol. Any other questions? You have to become a pujari. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, come on now! You can't agree with everything I said. You have to. It must be some question. Yes.
So the people who are
The microphone. Yes.
So Maharaj, the people
Where
who
you
are
been, by the way? I haven't seen you. For,
no, I was
I haven't seen you for 2 weeks.
yeah, Haribol.
Are you some, metaverse version of yourself right now, or is it the real you? Go ahead.
Yeah, Maharaj, we were in San Francisco.
Oh,
for
okay.
work related
San
stuff.
Francisco. Yeah.
We went to Berkeley Temple, the UC Berkeley. Yeah.
Okay.
So my
You're excused.
Yeah. Maharaj, so my question was, so the people who are following the other religions,
Yeah.
what do they need to do in order to go back to Godhead? Like, because they are unaware
okay.
of.
Now, see, this is a good question. Now, we just said you have to follow the yamas and niyamas, things you should not do, things you should do. Now, the Pope is not following the niyamas. The yamas, I mean. He's eating meat. So there's a problem there, right? And that's why the Vedas are so important, because they give the bedrock of truth, right? So once we understand that, then we can judge, if we are following properly and if others are following properly. So, for example, if I convince a young man to strap a bomb on his torso and go and blow it up, and I'm promising him that he'll have 70 virgins in Jannat, right? So, does that sound like something Krishna says? No, it's not. It's nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita. So, therefore, that would be a negative right there. And if I see the Pope eating meat, that's another negative, right? And I see, let's say, the Buddhists, they are trying to attain nirvana by eliminating their self. Nirvana means no movement of the mind. You have to blank it out completely. But that's not what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. He says, Satatam kirtayantamam jitantas dritavataha namasyantas tamam bhakta nitya yukta upasate. Let's take a look at what he says. Now we can compare that with what the Buddhists are saying. So that's in the 9th chapter, 14th verse. I think that's 14. I'm sorry, 9th chapter. satatam kirtayanto mam chitantascha dhritavataha namasyantascha mam yak bhakta nityayukta upasate. Where is that verse? 14, huh? Yeah. My book is so old now, I can't even open the pages. Yeah. So it says, always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So the Buddhists, they want to stay silent, they want to meditate, and basically annihilate their individuality. And the Buddhists, as opposed to the Mayavadis, they end up in the flip side of material nature. There's vyakta and avyakta. So they want to merge into that avyakta state, the unseen material nature state, when matter disappears and becomes potential energy, right? And waiting until the next creation. So that is not what Krishna says. Now let's look at the Christians. There are sincere Christians. Like I remember when I was a kid, we had a maid, and one day I'd caught some butterflies, and I was trying to pin them up on some cotton in a box, and she was ironing some clothes, and I asked her to just hold the butterfly straight so I could pin it, and she refused. So I won't do that. I said, why not? She said, because I'm a Christian. I said, well, wait a minute, I'm a Christian also. I mean, no, I won't touch anything that's dead. I said, well, no. She said, I won't harm any animal or insect. I said, but it's already dead, so you don't have to worry about that. She said, no. Don't you understand? She said, I won't have anything to do with death of a living being, a living entity. So that was a puzzle for me because I had never heard that before. And this is an ordinary lady, like she's a maid, right? So years later, when I became a devotee, I began to think about her again, and I realized she was a very advanced person, spiritually. Better than the Pope. She's a Catholic, by the way. She was better than the Pope. She never would touch meat and never would do anything to harm a living entity, whether even an insect or a butterfly. So there are Christians, there are some Muslims, there are some Buddhists that are actually very advanced people, right? But they do it on their own, right? They follow their religion, but they have certain understandings that even the Pope doesn't have, or the head of the Buddhists don't have, or the head of the Muslims don't have, you see. Like, for example, Hazrat Ali, he was basically a vegetarian. And he said, don't make your stomach a cemetery for animals. So here we see, even in other religions, sometimes they have the right understanding, right? But in the majority, no. And there's a lot of deviation. There's so much deviation in Hinduism also. So therefore, your question is, again?
Like for the people who are following the other religion,
Yeah.
what is their path to? Because are you saying that Indian?
Well, the idea is that I'm giving you examples of a few people following other religions that have come to the right realizations by the mercy of God, right? And so it's not that we should judge everyone, not one shoe fits all, right? You have to look individually. So, but when someone hears Bhagavad Gita, if they have a clean heart, it'll click right away. They'll say, that's what I've been looking for. Because it's the whole enchilada, right? There's no pieces missing. Every question is answered. So, therefore, when some guru says, well, the soul is like energy, it doesn't have a body. Well, right away, that's a red flag, right? Because Krishna has a body. You have a spiritual body. Krishna has a spiritual body. And with that spiritual body, you go back to Godhead, right? You can even activate the spiritual body now by engaging your physical body in the service of Krishna, and especially eating prasadam and chanting Hare Krishna and listening to the classes and preaching and going out on Sankirtan, you actually spiritualize the body. Your spiritual senses begin to act. Therefore, when you hear Bhagavad Gita, especially these Sanskrit verses, it illuminates you. You become deeper and deeper in your understanding. But if you have bad association, you will ruin everything. Just like we read this morning that Duryodhana was, first of all, his father was not teaching him properly, and then he had some bad friends like Sakuni and Karna. And therefore, when Krishna came, basically to beg them not to start a war and to, give the Pandavas their rightful inheritance, and in talking about the virtue of peace and harmony, they were not interested at all. Both Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana were not interested at all in what he said. And this is Krishna speaking, right? In other words, they're actually looking at God, right? But they can't understand anything because they have bad association. Whereas Bhisma Pitamaha and other great personalities that were hearing Krishna, they were ecstatic. They were thrilled to hear such mellifluous, honey-soaked words, right? But Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, it was zero for them. Right? So one time there was a father who was a baniya, a businessman. He had a grain shop in India, and he would take his son every Sunday or every once a week to the temple, and they would take part in the Arati, and then they would sit down and hear the pravachan. So one day they were hearing the pravachan, and the sadhu was saying, there's so many cows, they're not being taken care of properly. Sometimes they're roaming around the streets, and they eat garbage. So if you see a cow, you should feed it first-class grains and fruits. Don't let mother cow just walk by and eat garbage. So the father and the son both heard that, they went home, and the next day they opened the shop. So the boy would take out all the rice bags and the chole bags and all that, and the father would be on the phone, making deals, right? So that morning, a cow started walking down their street, and the cow came near the store and was looking at the bags. They're full of grains, And the boy was remembering the class. So he let the cow come and eat. So the father's talking on the phone, and he looks out, and he sees that the cow's eating the grains. He runs out and says, "What's going on here?" He got all upset. He said, "Well, how come you're letting the cow eat?" He said, "Dad, yesterday we heard the class." He said, No, you don't understand. He said, what don't I understand? He said, "Look, when the sadhu is speaking, you shake your head yes like this, But when you walk out, you forget it all. If you follow what he says, we'll go bankrupt. You understand?" So this is the culture, the ethos in India. You hear, but you don't follow, right? Just like downstairs, we have 10 signs in the shoe room. Put your shoes on the rack. Hindus do not read. They see it, and it doesn't connect. And they just put the shoes on the ground all the time. It's as if they didn't see or hear it. At one time, I insisted that we put a repetitive tape in the shoe room, saying, "Please put your shoes on the rack. Please put your shoes on the rack." And we did it, and then they took it away. They said it's getting people upset. So first of all, I want to thank the sponsors of the feast today, Lalita, Harish, and family, in memory of Satyanarayana Sharma. And then Madan Gopal Das and family, in loving memory of Dr. Mandakini Rai and P.K. Mishra. And Naga Prabhu Mutiya Sundaram and Lakshmi, this is a a person who's given a donation for sponsoring today's feast, and then Lakshmi Siruvuri, and Raj Kapoor, and Braja Kripadas, who was here a few minutes ago. So we want to thank them very much. So this is the problem. You know, we hear, but we don't follow. Or we don't hear, and obviously we don't follow. But if you take an interest in regularly hearing Bhagavad Gita spoken by genuine devotees and also reading it, eventually it'll enter into the noodle, right? And then you become illuminated because you're taking the effort to hear and chant the holy names of Krishna and the holy mantras of the Bhagavad Gita. Eventually you will understand, you'll be blessed by Krishna. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, well, it's getting late and we have to all get up for Mangal Arati tomorrow at 5:30 in the morning. So, Haribol, thank you very much.